Hello, this is Angelia, and you are listening to or watching the podcast Why You Do What You Do, the podcast that talks about human development and psychology to help you figure out maybe a little bit more about why you do what you do. And last time we were talking about, the guys who came after Eric Erickson, Vaillant, and Levinson to do a little, theorizing and studying of the good old, maturation of human beings. Remember, Erickson was talking about intimacy versus isolation. He said, if you're mature, emotionally, you will achieve intimacy with other folks. And if you're not, you're going to become a loner and you're going to isolate. So, these guys kind of came after him and said, well, there are different things, and, friendships is one of them, and career consolidation is another thing. And so we're going to kind of look into some more stuff about what these guys came up with. In comparing how the young men, excuse me here, I'll get my chair quite right, in the grant study adapted to the circumstances of their lives, Vaillant identified 4 characteristic patterns or adaptive mechanisms. Number 1, mature, such as using humor or helping others. Number 2, immature, such as developing aches and pains with no physical basis. Number 3, psychotic, distorting or denying reality. And 4, neurotic, repressing anxiety or developing irrational fears. Men who used mature mechanisms were mentally and physically healthier as well as happier than others. They got more satisfaction from work, enjoyed richer friendships, made more money, and seemed better adjusted. And now this is something that everyone in the world does, not just men at work. And I don't mean the group. You guys are good. We adapt to our world. And we use adaptive mechanisms to do so. So mature, such as using humor and helping others. I consider myself that because if you know me, I used to be in like an improv group and everything. We had a TV show, but I like to use humor because life is short. Life is not all that funny most of the time. So I like to put a little levity into it to help people see that everything isn't all or nothing. It's not the end of the world. Stuff happens. And helping others shows that you're not selfish, that it's not all about you, that you can help other people and help them to come up in the world too. And then the immature, such as developing aches and pains with no physical basis. I was accused of that by a disability judge, but it's not true. And there are people who, I have heard, do these things so they don't have to do anything or work or whatever. And that's, just immature. Oh, I don't feel good today. I don't feel like it, and, that's what kids do when they don't want to go to school, right? Psychotic, distorting or denying reality. And a lot of people are scared of that word, psychotic, but that doesn't necessarily mean you're a psychotic person who needs to be put away in an institution. It means you're not dealing with the reality of the situation. There are people who prefer, the little painting of things the way they want them to be, but that's not reality. So that is one mechanism that people use to adapt to the world. And neurotic. They are nervous people, but they try to repress their anxiety. But that spills out, because you can't really do that. So it kind of spills out in other areas of their life. So they develop these nervous, patterns and things. And, they have irrational fears that this is going to happen to them or whatever. So people have different ways of adapting to the adult world, and these are just some of those ways. Daniel Levinson and his colleagues at Yale University conducted in-depth interviews and personality tests with 40 men ages 35 to 45, industrial workers, business executives, excuse me here. Put this in a different area here. Biologists and novelists. So they studied these men. Because, like I said, in the day, us poor women got left out of a lot of things. We weren't important. From this study, as well as from biographical sources and other research, Levinson formed a theory of personality development in adulthood. Because, you know, we know how things form as a kid, but no one had really studied to this point. It was just assumed that, you know, the same things happen. So these guys were the kind of first guys to say, you know. At the heart of Levinson's theory is an evolving life structure, the underlying pattern or design of a person's life at a given time. People shape their life structures during overlapping eras of about 20 to 25 years each. And some people will call that a generation. It's an era. 20 years of your life, you know, you were young and doing things, or 25, because people mature at different rates, so there's a variable there, there's wiggle room, and then from, you know, the 20 to 40 mark, the 40 to 60 mark, the 60 to 80 mark, and 80 to maybe 100, 120, depending on, you know, how long you live. The eras are divided into entry and culminating phases. So you enter a phase, and then the culmination of this phase is a certain stage of development. And the age mark is just a go by. It's just a, you know, should, because everybody's different. So you might not even, like I said, there are people, remember we were reading about people who don't even attain adolescent stages of development by the time they're adults. You know, and then there are young people who have attained very sagacious ways of being. So everyone's different. Each phase has its own tasks, whose accomplishment becomes the foundation for the next life structure. So if you go through the one phase, then you start on the next, and the next, and the next. The eras and phases are linked by transitional periods when people reappraise and think about restructuring their lives. And I know I've done that several times. I've gotten to the point I was like, you know, this just ain't working for me anymore. I need to find a better way. And then I'll get into doing things, and figure out another way of doing things. So, you know, I was told by a psychologist I'm very resilient that way. So, you know, that's a good thing to be. Indeed, according to Levinson, people spend nearly half their adult lives in transitions, which may involve crises, because crisis will cause you to rethink, and that can cause you to evolve as a person. In the entry phase of young adulthood, a man builds his first provisional life structure, or a woman also now. We're not just, men just don't go out in the world and work anymore now, do they? So when you're young, you start building that scaffolding that you're going to build the rest of your life on. He leaves his parents' home, perhaps to go to college or into the armed services, and becomes financially and emotionally independent. And that's the goal. You know, it doesn't always work that way, but that's the goal. He chooses an occupation, perhaps a wife, and forms a dream about what he hopes to achieve in the future. So, you know, the next stage, he's got that going on, you know, and he's laid the next layer, you know, or story of scaffolding for the rest of his life. Excuse me. And when I say his or he, I mean loosely, amen. You know, I'm not getting into the crazy pronoun things. In the age, around 30, transition, a man reevaluates his entry life structure and seeks to improve it. So about midlife, you're like, well, okay, this is what's working for me. This maybe not so much. I'm gonna make things better for myself. And that's why I talk about the kids, you know, making sure they have a stable foundation under them before they start bringing other people into the world. You lay that foundation and then you improve upon it, you build upon it, because that's going to hold your life for the rest of your life. Then, in the culminating phase of early adulthood, he settles down. He sets goals, a professorship, for instance, or a certain level of income, and a time for achieving them, say by the age of 40. Now, we all know, doesn't always work that way. But that's a goal. And that's important to have goals, because if you don't have a goal, you're not working towards anything. If you're not working towards anything, you're just existing. If you're just existing, you're not going to be happy with that, because the creative spirit of creator is in you, and it wants to create. It wants to make something. So if you don't have a goal to strive for, that's going to leave a hole, and that's not going to work. He anchors his life in family, occupation, and community. So that is where your anchor is. You go out and you make a family. You started out with one, but that's your, biological family. You didn't choose that. You just got dropped in the middle of it. When you become an adult, you choose a family. You make a family. And that becomes your family. And that's how it's supposed to be. Now, there are people who start that at an immature level, and then they are not so into it, and decide not to stick with it. So, again, that's why I think it's important for young people to be mature enough to bring other people into the world before they start doing it. At the same time, he chafes under authority. He wants to become his own man. And a lot of us have that problem, the boss, how did you get to be the boss? It just had to be the money situation, because you were doing dumb things with your business that I would not do. We all go there. He may be at odds with his wife, children, lover, and again, if you have a wife, why are you having a lover? Bad. Boss, friends, mentors, or co-workers. And this is where people are uncomfortable in their life. It's not fitting right anymore, and they're uncomfortable, and so they're going to take that out on everybody else. And a lot of people don't realize that that's what that's telling them. When you're stressed out at everybody else and you're snipping and snapping at everybody else, that's telling you you're not comfortable in your own life, that you need to make some changes to feel like your life fits you. How he deals with the issues of this phase will affect the middle transition. So we got the start of life, and we're heading into the middle part. In a companion study of 45 women, in later years, they figure, women want lives too. Women have development too. Amazing. Found that women go through similar eras. Imagine that. Phases and transitions. But because of traditional cultural divisions between masculine and feminine roles back in the day, women may face different psychological and environmental constraints in forming their life structures, and their transitions tend to take longer. And that's because we're taught to be the givers, the one who does for everybody else. So if you're doing for everybody else and not meeting your needs, it takes you longer to navigate your life stages. So there is something to be said for being a little selfish for ourselves, women. As the saying goes, you can't pour from an empty cup. You have to pour from your overflow. So you need to take care of yourself first, then take care of everybody else. Because you're probably going to have to if you're a woman. Yeah, there's a joke on you guys. Evaluating normative stage models. Normative stage studies have identified developmental threads that run through the lives of many people. And they say many because not all, of course. Like I said, there's exceptions to every rule. As gender roles continue to change, both women's and men's personality development will likely be affected. Because, again, gender roles are changing. You have stay-at-home dads. You have, moms who go out and work all the time. You have people even changing gender. So gender roles are not fixed anymore. Gone are the days in this country. Now, in some other countries, they're still a little behind. But in this country, your girl can grow up and do the same thing your boy can. Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what sex you are. The most important message of normative stage models is that adults continue to change, develop, and grow. And that's if you let yourself. Change is scary for a lot of people, but change is necessary if you want to grow as a person. If you want to develop to become a whole healthy person, change is necessary. Sorry. Timing of events model. The timing of events model, supported by Bernice Newgarten and others, holds that the course of development depends on when certain events occur in people's lives. So before they were saying it's stages, you gotta go start here, go here. Now she's saying it's more events, more things that have happened to these people. I remember they were talking about that the other day, and is in adolescence. The more experiences you have, the more you grow, because it teaches you more. As we have discussed, normative life events, also called normative age-graded events, are those that happen to most adults at certain times of life. Such events as marriage, parenthood, grandparenthood, and retirement. So these events cause a change in your life. When you get married, that changes your life. It's no longer all about you. It's supposed to be all about us. And then when you bring other people into the mix, other little people, that's supposed to change. It's no longer all about me and you. It's all about the bigger us. And then when you become a grandparent, you might have to step in and help out the kids, with their kids. That happens. And then at some point, you're going to get to retire. And hopefully, you're ready for that. And if not, if you're approaching that, you need to start thinking about that. Events that occur when expected are on time. Events that occur earlier or later than usual are off time, and that's their description. They have decided this should happen at this age, this should happen at this age, this should happen about this age, this should happen about this age. And, when things happen not in that scope of that era, then they'd say it's an off-time event. Now, like I said, because everybody's different and everything happens in different ways, don't let that, make you feel like there's a problem if your events were off-time. According to this model, people usually are keenly aware of their own timing and of the social clock, their society's norms or expectations for the appropriate timing of life events. Like, let's just use pregnancy for an example here. You don't expect your 13-year-old to get pregnant, but sometimes it happens. You don't expect a 40-year-old woman or a 50-year-old woman to get pregnant, but sometimes that happens. Crisis may result not from reaching a certain age, but from the unexpected occurrence and timing of life events. So if something like that, needless to say, if your high school student gets pregnant, that's a crisis in the family. That's something that's going to affect everybody. And if you've gone through menopause and then you find yourself suddenly pregnant, that's a crisis, because you thought I was done with this. If events occur out of time, development proceeds smoothly. On time, yeah. If not, stress can result. Stress may come from an unexpected event, an event that happens off time, or the failure of an expected event to occur at all. So, if you were young and you looked forward to getting married all your life, and then you don't, that might bother you. Now, I personally don't think it should, because it's better to not be attached at the hip to someone than to be attached to the wrong person. I know people who are single, have been single. I knew people who were single all their life, but it never seemed like the right person came along. So maybe, God had other plans for them. So again, if it's not how you thought it would be, it's just life. Just life. Keep walking. Personality differences influence the way people respond to life events and may even influence their timing. So, different personalities are going to do things differently. If you have a child that was molested, I forget what the current statistic, last I seen, is like about a third of them are going to act out sexually. So, they might get pregnant sooner because they're acting out sexually. Another part of those, I think it's 50%, will be repressed. They will be prudes because they don't want to deal with that. So they will not do that until maybe a much later age, or not at all. For example, a resilient person is likely to experience an easier transition to adulthood and the tasks and events that lie ahead than an overly anxious person who may put off relationship or career decisions. So anxiety can cause a problem in your life, and that's why I tell people, if you know if you got anxiety or not, you know. And if you do, go get some help. I took some anti-anxiety meds for about 6 months after my mother's death. I had depression and anxiety, and I was having a rough life before that, and then that happened, and I thought about just ending it all. So for 6 months I was on antidepressants and anxiety meds, and it did help. It leveled me off to the point where I could take a breath, because a lot of things happened all at once, and get on with having a life. So there's no shame. If you need help, go get it. The typical timing of events varies from culture to culture and from generation to generation. So, your culture's way might be different than my culture's way, or this culture's way might be different from that culture's way. And generations too. Your way of being is not the same as your parents' way of being or your grandparents' way of being. And it's not going to be the same as your children's and grandchildren's way of being, because the world moves on and things change. One illustration is the rise in the average age when adults first marry in the United States. Another is the trend toward delayed first childbirth. So, the rise in the age, people are waiting until they're older to get married, which is actually sensible according to the psychologists, because they say you're not mature enough before the age of 30 usually, to be bringing other people into the world and being mature and patient and having the knowledge to be authoritarian parents, and teach them how to have a life. And so it's a good thing. A timetable that seems right to people in one cohort may not seem so right to the next. Since the mid-20th century, Western societies have been, oh my gosh, I'm going to sneeze. I don't want to. Woo! Have become less age conscious. The feeling that there is a right time to do certain things is less rigid, and the acceptable range of age norms is wider. Today people are more accepting of a 40-year-old first-time parent and 40-year-old grandparents, 50-year-old retirees, and 75-year-old workers, 60-year-olds in jeans, and 30-year-old college presidents. So, that's not out of the norm today. In the past, it might have been. So they might have considered that an out-of-time event. But nowadays, not so much. So as the world changes, that theory is becoming less hard and fast. The timing of events model has made an important contribution to our understanding of adult personality by emphasizing the individual life course and challenging the idea of universal age-related change. Because in the universe, excuse me. Oh my goodness, excuse me. Okay, I'm back. Trait models. Costa and McCrae's 5 factors. Rather than looking at the course of typical lives, trait models look for stability or change in personality traits, because we're not the same all throughout our lives. You know, what you liked when you were 5 might not be the same as what you like when you're 50. So things change. Personality traits change. Paul T. Costa and Robert R. McCrae, researchers with the National Institute on Aging, had developed and tested a 5-factor model consisting of factors that seem to underlie 5 groups of associated traits, known as the Big 5. So if you ever hear, you know, any psychologists or anything talking about the Big 5, that's what they're talking about. There are, number 1, Neuroticism. Number 2, Extraversion. Number 3, Openness to experience. Number 4, Conscientiousness. And number 5, Agreeableness. Excuse me, and this is certainly not all the personality traits. These are just the Big 5 that they talk about. Neuroticism is a cluster of 6 negative traits indicating emotional instability: anxiety, hostility, depression, self-consciousness, impulsiveness, and vulnerability. Highly neurotic people are nervous, fearful, irritable, easily angered, and sensitive to criticism. They may feel sad, hopeless, lonely, guilty, and worthless. So this is the neurotic personality trait. And as I'm saying these, you guys listen and decide if you fit into any of those. And if you do, then you know there's a step now you can take to help yourself. Extraversion also has 6 facets: warmth, gregariousness, assertiveness, activity, excitement seeking, and positive emotions. Extroverts are sociable and like attention. They keep busy and active, they are constantly looking for excitement, and they enjoy their life. We can speculate that Ingrid Bergman would have had fairly high scores on some facets of neuroticism and extraversion and low scores on others. Poor Ingrid Bergman. They just, you know, keep throwing her up as an example, don't they? Back in the day, she was scandalous, but now she's not so much, you know. Okay, I'm back. Sorry about the pause there. One son called and one came in the door, so I've been busy. People who are open to experience are willing to try new things and embrace new ideas. And we all know people who are fine with that. You know, some people are resistant to that, don't like change. I'm fine with that. I like having new experiences. They have vivid imagination and strong feelings. And I do. And, you know, I'm sure we all know people like that. Creative types, you know, and, you know, a lot of people make fun of creative types and say they're emotional. And here you go. It's a thing. It's just part of the traits. They appreciate beauty and the arts and question traditional values. Ingrid Bergman probably would have scored high in these areas. Back to poor old Ingrid Bergman. Conscientious people are achievers. They are competent, orderly, dutiful, deliberate, and disciplined. And that's, you know, tends to be people who need structure or who like structure. Agreeable people are trusting, straightforward, altruistic, compliant, modest, and easily swayed. And I know some people like that. There's some friends of mine I grew up with come up through school order that describes them to a T. Some of these characteristics could be identified with Ingrid Bergman in her youth, but less and less as she got older. Because as the lifestyle goes on, the lifetime goes on, we do change, you know, or you should change. By analyzing cross-sectional, longitudinal, and sequential data from several large samples of men and women of all ages, Costa and McCrae found remarkable stability in all 5 domains. So, like I said, basically, if you start out a certain way, you kind of stay that way. Now, that's not hard and fast rule, because as we learn more, we change more. Like if we start with our first here, neurotic people. If neurotic people start out that way, usually that has to do with, abuse of kinds in the family. If they get into a better situation and they go to therapy and work on themselves, that can be overcome. So, like I say, there's always exceptions to the rules. However, they did find age-related differences between college students and young and middle-aged adults. Somewhere between age 21 and 30, personality appears to take its final, fully developed form, these researchers concluded. Adaptations may occur in response to new responsibilities and demands, traumatic events, or major cultural transformations. But basic tendencies remain unchanged and influence the way a person adapts. So, like they noted there are exceptions to the rules. You can, overcome personality traits that you don't like. But that is a conscious effort. You have to want to, and then you have to do the work necessary to do so. Excuse me. That's what life coaching is all about. That's what I try to help my clients do. Identify where you went off the tracks a little bit, figure out why you went off the tracks a little bit, and then tweak how you can realign and send yourself back in the direction you want to be going in. And that's where I'm going to leave you today. I hope this helped you figure out maybe a little bit more about why you do what you do. Please like and share this educational program. If you want to help me out, subscribe to my YouTube channel. If you want to help me out even more, go to my Patreon page and become a patron. That's all for now. Until next time.